Welcome to the WorldWire Update. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon for more updates and thrilling short scenes. The US and Canada share more than a border. They share a vital economic artery, the land route to Alaska. The Alaska Highway, stretching nearly 1,400 miles through British Columbia and the Yukon, is a lifeline for Alaskan communities. Trucks carry urgent goods, fresh food, critical parts, and time-sensitive materials, supplementing the bulk cargo that arrives by sea. This overland route is a symbol of US-Canada cooperation, with free passage long taken for granted. But now, this essential corridor faces an unprecedented threat. A new trade dispute is brewing, and the idea of a toll on this route has become a real possibility. Communities on both sides of the border are alarmed, questioning the future of this crucial link. The stability of one of the world's closest alliances is suddenly at risk. In March 2025, British Columbia Premier David Eby made headlines by announcing a bold new plan. The province would impose tolls on commercial trucks heading to Alaska. This announcement sent shockwaves through both Canadian and American business communities, as the route through British Columbia is a vital artery for goods traveling between the lower 48 states and Alaska. But this move wasn't about raising money for road repairs or infrastructure. Instead, it was a carefully calculated response to mounting US trade threats and protectionist measures that had put Canadian industries on edge. The proposed tolls specifically targeted vehicles traveling from the continental United States through BC to Alaska, effectively turning the Alaska route into a powerful pressure point in the ongoing trade dispute. For decades, this corridor had been a lifeline for Alaskan communities, supplying everything from groceries to construction materials. In response to the escalating tensions, Eby's government introduced the Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act. This legislation granted the province the authority to implement tolls if US hostilities continued, signaling that British Columbia was ready to defend its economic interests. The act itself didn't immediately create tolls, but it gave BC a powerful bargaining chip and leverage in the intensifying dispute with Washington. It was a clear message: British Columbia would not stand by while its economy was threatened. Deputy Premier Nikki Sharma addressed the public, stating, "We did not ask for this trade war, but we will fight for BC's economy." Her words resonated with many British Columbians who felt caught in the crossfire of international politics. The move was a calculated effort to push back against aggressive US policies and force Washington to reconsider its approach. By leveraging a critical supply route, BC hoped to bring American negotiators back to the table. By targeting Alaska's supply chain, British Columbia aimed to create internal US pressure, hoping that affected businesses and communities would urge their leaders to de-escalate the conflict and seek compromise. The Alaska Highway, once a symbol of cross-border partnership and cooperation, was now being used as a bargaining chip in a high-stakes game of economic brinkmanship. With livelihoods, supply chains, and international relations hanging in the balance, the stakes for both sides had never been higher. British Columbia's toll threat was a direct response to President Trump's aggressive trade stance. In early 2025, Trump twice threatened a sweeping 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, rattling markets and alarming Canadian leaders. His rhetoric was confrontational, accusing Canada of unfair practices and warning of a trade war the US would win. On the day BC announced its toll plan, Trump delayed the tariffs by a month, but the threat remained. The climate of hostility pushed Canadian provinces to adopt defensive measures. Premier Eby called Trump's actions economic war, signaling Canada wouldn't back down. Ontario announced a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the US Yukon, pledged to stop buying American goods. Instead of unity, North America was fracturing, turning allies into adversaries. The trade feud was now a continental crisis. The Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act was designed as a flexible weapon, not a blunt instrument. It gave BC's cabinet the power to impose tolls on highways and ferries, but only if US tariffs went ahead. The act's broad language created uncertainty for American trucking companies, forcing them to prepare for sudden cost hikes. A sunset clause set the act to expire in 2027, signaling it was a temporary, targeted measure. BC also ordered government agencies to stop buying American products and banned liquor store sales of alcohol from Republican-led states, including Alaska. These actions showed BC was ready to fight on multiple fronts. The message: BC would not absorb US economic aggression without consequences. The countdown to escalation had begun. The US response was immediate and fierce. with officials moving quickly to address what they saw as a direct challenge to American interests. The tension in the air was unmistakable as the news broke, and the administration wasted no time in formulating a strategy. President Trump called BC's toll plan an unprovoked attack and threatened further countermeasures. He made it clear that the United States would not stand by while its citizens and businesses were targeted, vowing to use every tool at his disposal to protect American interests. Trump's rhetoric was sharp, and his administration signaled a willingness to escalate if necessary. In Alaska, officials were alarmed. Governor Mike Dunleavy urged both sides to return to diplomacy, warning of dire consequences for Alaskans. He emphasized the deep economic and social ties between Alaska and British Columbia, and cautioned that a prolonged dispute could harm families, businesses, and communities on both sides of the border. Alaska's U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan threatened economic retaliation, targeting BC's tourism industry. He spoke passionately about the need to defend Alaska's access to vital goods and services, and warned that any attempt to disrupt the state's supply chain would be met with a strong response. He proposed waiving the Passenger Vessel Services Act, allowing cruise ships to bypass BC ports and sail directly from Washington to Alaska. This move, he argued, would send a powerful message to Canadian officials and demonstrate that Alaska had options to protect its economy. This would devastate BC's tourism sector, which relies on millions of cruise passengers each summer. Local businesses, from restaurants to tour operators, depend on the steady flow of visitors, and a sudden drop in cruise traffic could have ripple effects throughout the region. Sullivan reminded everyone this waiver had been used during the COVID-19 pandemic, proving it was a real threat. The memory of empty docks and shuttered businesses was still fresh, and the possibility of a repeat sent shockwaves through the tourism industry. The message was clear: choke off Alaska's supply chain and the U.S. would choke off BC's tourism lifeline. Both sides now face the prospect of significant economic disruption, with livelihoods hanging in the balance. The tit-for-tat escalation was now in full swing, with each side waiting to see who would blink first. The stakes were high, and the world watched as the dispute threatened to spiral further. Both sides were bracing for economic pain, uncertain how long the standoff would last, or what the ultimate cost would be for ordinary people caught in the crossfire. For Alaskans, the proposed tolls aren't just a distant political debate, they're a direct hit to daily life, with real consequences for families, workers, and businesses across the state. In a place where the cost of living is already high and the margin for error is slim, even small changes can have a big impact. While most cargo arrives by sea, trucks are the lifeline for the most urgent goods: fresh produce, critical parts, and time-sensitive supplies that simply can't wait. These deliveries keep store shelves stocked and businesses running, especially in remote communities. The Alaska Trucking Association has warned that new tolls would drive up transportation costs, and those increases would quickly trickle down to consumers. That means higher prices at the checkout, making it even harder for families to afford basics like milk, bread, and vegetables. State Senator Robert Myers, who's also a trucker, says delays and cost hikes could make fresh food even scarcer and more expensive. For many rural Alaskans, that could mean fewer healthy options and longer waits for essentials. Alaska's vital oil and gas industry also depends on the highway for urgent shipments. Tolls could slow down critical repairs and projects, threatening jobs and the state's economic stability. Every business and resident would feel the ripple effects, from construction delays to small shops struggling with higher supply costs. The impact would reach every corner of Alaska, from city centers to the most remote villages. Trucking companies would face tough choices: either absorb the extra costs and risk going under, or pass them on to customers, making life in Alaska even pricier and more uncertain. For Alaskans, this trade dispute isn't just about policy, it's a threat to their wallets, their jobs, and their way of life. The stakes are high, and the outcome could reshape daily living for everyone in the state. The BC U.S. dispute is part of a larger unraveling of North American cooperation. Inspired by BC, other provinces announced their own retaliatory measures: Ontario with electricity surcharges, Yukon with bans on U.S. goods and contracts. Even symbolic gestures like banning Trump Jr. from Yukon showed the depth of Canadian frustration. If BC passes its law and the U.S. imposes tariffs, the tit-for-tat could spiral, harming both economies. The integrated North American economy, built over decades, is at risk of unraveling. The only way out is diplomacy. Leaders have a brief window to step back from the brink. A resolution will require the US to drop its tariff threats and Canada to withdraw its retaliatory measures. Otherwise, a costly trade war could turn a vital link into a symbol of division.